All right, good evening, y'all. Welcome. This is a special meeting of the Gainesville City Commission, May 12th, 2021. And we just got one item on our agenda tonight, discussion of the upcoming fiscal year 22 budget for GRU. And so is there a motion to adopt our agenda? Okay, moved by Commissioner Ward, seconded by Commissioner Sacco. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. With that, I will turn it over to Mr. Bolarski.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner. Thank you. Hello?
We can hear you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioners. Yeah, gee, it seems like it's been almost a 2.5-year financial journey through our budget. It seems like we've been perpetually budgeting since back in early 2019 when I wrote GRU to Crossroads to talk about some of the disruptive utility model that we live under and some of the past decisions and the current issues that are facing the utility. And so you're going to hear some of that same stuff tonight from Claudia and her team. But I think it's important to continue to focus on some of those issues because, quite frankly, the utilities are the fulcrum of the city's financial balance. If the utility is not healthy, neither is the city. So I just think it's important to maybe talk at length about some of these issues. And I will not talk at length. I will be finished right now, and I will turn it over to Ms. Rasnick. Thank you very much.
Welcome, Ms. Rasnick.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. This item is in response to the Commission's request that GRU bring back to the Commission labor reductions, which are employee layoffs and not hiring for vacant positions, non-labor expense reductions, and rate increase options for the Commission to consider. Those options and the related bill impacts are at the end of this presentation. Prior to reviewing those options, GRU is providing a holistic view of the utility financial condition, projections, and history. At the core of the budgeting process, GRU compares the revenues that the utility is expected to generate against its expenses. These expenses include the profit to be generated for the general fund transfer. This particular slide reflects GRU's revenue projections from fiscal year 2021 to 2027. That is the blue bar. The red bar is GRU's expense projections from fiscal year 2021 to fiscal year 2027. The red bar includes the GFT payment. Expenses include operations and maintenance expenses, debt service, construction projects through UPIF, and the GFT. Operations and maintenance expenses provide for safe and reliable service. O&M expenses also provide for regulatory and contracted services from GRU. Debt service is fixed and is large. Debt service accounts for roughly 25% of expenses currently. The general fund transfer is also fixed and is large. The GFT as a return of profit has been required by the Commission to be $36 million. So this slide reflects a visualization of revenues and expenses after the debt restructuring in 2019. As you recall, the debt restructuring was completed as the Commission was facing a significant shortfall in revenues and declining cash reserves at the utility, combined with Commission direction to continue forward on the path to update the billing system, CIS, and implement AMI. You can see the stark difference in total expenses between the years with the debt restructuring and those without. In essence, this restructuring provided the Commission a buffer. This buffer ends in 2025 when the debt service ratchets back up significantly. In other words, this is the Commission's window, and this was discussed at length during the debt restructuring.
Ms. Rasnick,
Even
if you
with
could
the 2019.
Ms. Rasnick, if you could please pause for a question.
Sure.
Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it's less a question than just I wanted point out that I notice a word, words matter, and a word that we have not consistently used that I'm noticing we are using consistently throughout this presentation, and I've noticed the last month or so, is the word profit. As if there were I don't like where that's headed, let me say that. It is not necessarily a profit that anyone's looking for. There are fees and taxes that would come to the city of Gainesville if our utility were not a municipal utility. We would not call that profit. It would not be that. And while there are benefits to owning a utility, all of that is not intended to be profit. And I really don't like the use of that word, and I want to put that out there right up front. I see where we're going with this, and Ms. Rasting, I don't think that's probably your word. But I have concerns with the use of that, and I wanted to put it out there early. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Santos.
Thank you, Mayor Pro, sorry. I agree with Commissioner Ward. That's a new thing that's popped up, and I think it's being used for not the greatest reason, and I think it's not the normal nomenclature used with municipal utilities. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm curious, since two commissioners wanted to raise that issue, why? Go deeper. I'm interested in hearing more why this is a concern.
Commissioner
If
Ward?
you wish, you don't have to.
If you wish, Commissioner Ward.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. Words matter, they mean something, and in this case, as Commissioner Santos pointed out, we don't use the word profit very specifically in the municipal utility world. We haven't used it in previous budget years, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot. I'm not interested in doing that. I do believe that it's the wrong word. It's not industry standard. It's not something you'll see if you go to other cities that have a fund transfer of any sort. There are lots of things we could call this. Many things that a general fund transfer could be called. I believe we've chosen the word profit to be adversarial, to be real honest. I don't know who chose it. It certainly wasn't the commission. Thanks.
Yeah, I think the reason why I ask is I think it's pretty obvious from a while now we've been having this conversation, and I can't recall exactly how often. I just thought it was interesting the choice of words that you all use. That words matter for this. And I just wanted to hear more. I thought that was interesting.
Do you need to go deeper on something?
No, I really just wanted to bring that up because I think that we have heard pretty consistently what the perspective is from the utility here, and you know that has not been, I think, hidden. I think what we're getting at here now is we just need to move on with the slideshow.
Commissioner Santos, do you want to add anything?
No, I just think we should use consistent nomenclature across the municipal utility realm. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, I mean, my 2 cents worth, governments don't generate profits, period. Governments do not generate profits. We bring in revenues and we expend those revenues on services. So, you know, we do need to be consistent with that. Governments are not the same as a for-profit investor-owned utility or any other kind of business. So with that in mind, I don't know, Ms. Rasnick, I kind of go back to the scene in The Office where the employees had learned a song believing that the name of the company that had bought them was Sabre, and everything rhymed with that, and it ended up being Sabre, and it was very hard for them to change midstream. So I think we'll recognize, when, that word comes up and what it does or doesn't mean. But if you would just please go on with your presentation, we'd appreciate it. Thank you. Are you waiting to let in? Your hand was up. Oh, yeah, that was it.
So regarding the topic profit, when we're looking at the utilities flow of funds, we generate, and this is something that we're all well aware of, obviously, we generate operating revenues, which pay operating expenses, which pay debt service, fund UPIF, and those are some of the pieces that I've hit on here. The very last payment is the general fund payment according to that flow of funds in our bond resolution. So it really is kind of what's left over. So whether we use the word profit or expense, it's really what's left over to cover the GFT, because the bond resolution is set up so that we fund the infrastructure of the utility through O&M costs. We pay the debt service, which are paying back our investors, their principal and their interest payments. The UPIF pays for some of the construction projects, but all those expenses have to be paid. And then what's left over is for, to quote the bond resolution, for any other lawful purpose. And that's the general fund transfer. Those are the conversations that we've had with bond counsel as well. So I will be cognizant of the sensitivity around the word profit. You are correct, Mr. Mayor. It is within this presentation. So I may pause a moment if I come across that word. So if you guys could bear with me. So I think where I might start back. So the expenses include operations and maintenance expenses, debt service, construction projects through UPIF, and the general fund transfer payment. Operations and maintenance expenses provide for safe, reliable service. O&M expenses also provide for regulatory and contracted services from GRU. Debt service is fixed and is large. Debt service accounts for roughly 25% of expenses currently. The general fund transfer is also fixed and is large, and it's been required by the commission to be at $36 million for fiscal year 22. So this particular slide provides a visualization of revenues and expenses after the debt restructuring was completed in 2019. As you recall, the debt restructuring was completed as the commission was facing a significant shortfall in revenues and declining cash reserves at the utility, combined with direction to continue forward on the path to update the billing system, CIS, and implement AMI. So the 2019 transaction had the effect of reducing GRU's expenses, which you can see for 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024. This reduction was in the debt service. By reducing the debt service in these years, the commission's plan was to stabilize cash levels and to pay for CIS and AMI. You can see the difference in total expenses between the years with the debt restructuring and those years without. In essence, this restructuring provided the commission a buffer. This buffer ends in 2025 when the debt service ratchets back up significantly. In other words, this is the commission's window. This was discussed at length during the debt restructuring. Even with the 2019 restructuring effects, GRU does not, in any year, earn enough revenues to pay its expenses. The commission is running a deficit every year at GRU. So revenues are basically flat. There's a continued focus for conservation. Organic growth of customers and usage is weak. Unfortunately, the revenues will only grow with rate increases. So the expense side is increasing every year. CPI and PPI are driving costs higher. The first few months of 2021 have brought significant price increases. Supply shortages are driving costs up. Shipping issues are impacting supply. Non-labor expenses are increasing beyond revenues. Revenues go up about 0.5%. Non-labor up to 3% in some cases, in some areas 20%. And total rewards has placed additional cost on the utility. So let's take a look and see what the projections were without the debt restructuring. You can see the gaps are much, much wider. So both before and after the debt restructuring, GRU is not covering its expenses. GRU is running at a deficit. The utility was set on this path over a decade ago with the biomass PPA and the solar feed-in tariff. So combining those past decisions, which increased the debt service at the utility, with decreasing usage of services, and we can see that in our revenues, and conservation efforts will continue to widen this gap. And you can see that there's another bump in the debt service coming in 2025. So I've covered most of the points on this particular slide. The one point I wanted to cover was the one at the bottom, is that this community, your constituents, have a lower household income as compared to other portions of the US, as noted by S&P. So what does it cost to run GRU? So the commission has required the GFT to be 36 million. Must-haves are infrastructure. Without a functional and safe infrastructure, the commission will not be able to generate revenues, among other things. The operational areas are functioning with less and less, with an aging infrastructure that needs more and more maintenance to keep up. All CapEx and O&M meet this definition. The commission has kept expenses low for years, and this has reached the point where any more cuts to expenses or capital may impact the safety or reliability of the pipes in the ground, the overhead or an underground wires, the water plants, the wastewater plants, the power plants. So what's nice to have? Retain and develop talent, projects with high rates of return, and value-added services. So the pain points. I covered the first few points in the beginning. The couple that I would like to point out is that revenues increase 0.5% a year compared with expenses, 3 to 20 plus, and that the utility requires rate increases to keep up. There's a perception gap between GRU rates and its peers, but it must be noted that this commission has the highest renewable energy portfolio in the Southeast, paid for an increased debt service expenses, yet the utility is continually asked to trim O&M costs. So these are the actions that have already been taken. Kept O&M expenses to 0.5%, even with the 3 to 20 plus in non-labor expenses and 8 million in additional labor costs from total rewards. Absorbed COVID costs and logistics of working remotely, reduced FTEs, and maintained a $38.3 million GFT. So even with all of these pressures, so we have revenue at 0.5%, expenses increasing 3 to 20, almost 8 million in total rewards labor costs, debt service is extremely high, a high general fund transfer, and several years of suppressed rate increases. The commission did give the direction to produce the GFT of 36 million by cutting labor, which does mean people, real bodies, and non-labor, or produce a profit through a combination of rate increases and cutting labor and non-labor, or produce a profit of 36 million, I apologize, I said the word again, or produce the GFT of 36 million through rate increases. So this slide reflects in dollars the change in expenses at the utility, an annualized rate of 3.68% for the years 2016 through 2021, and only 0.5% for 2020 and 2021 under the commission's direction. This slide is shown only to reflect that increases in general government's expenses is exacerbating the reliance on keeping the GFT higher. Expenses increased 5.12% annualized and 9.85% over the past 2 years. This slide reflects the employee count at the utility. It's a reduction of 7 from 2011 to 2020. There was an increase in general government of 234. For full disclosure, I do believe that the majority of that FTE FT increase is due to the removal of prison labor and the end of a grant for firefighters. So this slide is only shown to reflect that increases in FTEs at general government is exacerbating the reliance on keeping the GFT high. So this is a visualization of GRU's FTE since fiscal year 2011. And it's a good visualization as we talk about the options when we get back down into the bottom of this presentation. The quantity of employees in those options range from 44 to 129 employees that may no longer either work at GRU or have the opportunity to work at GRU. GRU is currently operating below 2011 staffing levels when accounting for former NACE employees. A reduction of 6 to 14% of the workforce will be extremely detrimental to the utilities infrastructure.
Mr.
And this is
Resnick,
just a-
I'd
Sure.
like to ask a question. I don't know if it's best directed at you or the general manager. I noticed that when calculating growth in FTEs, you left out the employees that GRU brought on board from NACE, but when netting the growth in employees for general government, you did not net out those positions you mentioned that replaced prison labor or GFR labor. In both cases, they were people that were performing work for the city, but categorized under different funding sources. But you did not use that same comparison side by side. Either do you have that net when you include that, or I know it's something you could provide to us in the future if you don't have it right now.
I think it's 36 or 38. So
For NACE,
for
do you
the
have
F-
the number for general government?
for the addition of the firefighters and prison labor?
Correct.
No. I do remember going through those meetings when those discussions were, and I remember it's a significant quantity.
Okay. All I would ask in future presentations is that the basis of comparison is the same between general government and GRU. I don't have a strong preference for whether you net them out or not, but it should be consistent for us and anybody else watching to know what the true comparison is. Commissioner Santos?
Thank you, Mayor. And maybe it's just the difference in NACE employees as they came on board. Between slide page 12 and page 13, and FY 2020 it has 871 employees, and then on page 13 it has FY 2020 at 835. Is that difference the NACE, or what's that? What are those 36 employee difference?
It's 36 employees. Mr. Bolarski, did you want to weigh in on that at all?
Sure. Are you talking on page 11, Commissioner? Which page? I'm sorry.
Page 12.
11.
Oh,
I guess
yeah.
the same as both 11 and 12 are the same, it looks like. But when you look over in FY 2020 for GRU, it has 871 employees there. And then on page 13, it has 835. So I was just wondering, are those 36 employees NACE? Is that the difference?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they are.
All right, and then I guess on FY 2020, the general government has 1494, and then FY 2020 it has 1,545 on page 14. Do you know why those numbers are different?
So I would say that's the way that the two slides were put together. So on slide 11, it has total full-time employees for the city overall for FY 2011 through FY 2020. So that's the 2416. And then as you work the math down on 11, 36 essentially come off the 871, which come to the 835. The NACE employees were brought on, I think, in 2019. because of the purchase of the biomass plant. Now on 12, we have the total 2416.75 less 871. So everything's together that comes to the 1545. Is there a specific question that I'm missing here?
No, I'm just trying to
Claudia,
get
can
an understanding of the difference in the data, but I think
Yeah.
you've explained it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think I know what you're addressing, Commissioner. You're looking at the slides on 11 and 12, and it shows under the city manager a specific number, but you're adding the city attorney's office, the city auditor's office, the city clerk, and on all the
Okay,
general
that makes
government
sense.
functions
Okay.
to come up to what, does that make sense?
Yep. Okay, that makes sense. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, sure.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, go on, please continue, Ms. Resing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the question always comes up, and this is the tough question. So among many other tough questions, so how could reducing expenses be so hard? So the FY22 budget is $415 million. The debt service is a required payment, and that pays back the investors, the people who loan the city money. Fuel expenses are a pass-through, and they have to be paid in order to produce electricity. UPIF is required per the bond resolution for capital, and the commission requires a GFT of 36 million. So that leaves 152 million after those required payments. So of that 152 million, we have non-labor O&M at 76 million. The next slide gives the categories. Labor, so this means the people that are doing the work, 74 million. Maximum cuts that we have assembled are 2 million in non-labor, and there's a slide with those in the presentation. So this slide provides the categories for non-labor O&M. So this is for the entire utility. The largest payment is for utilities. So GRU has to pay for lights, water, wastewater usage, just like everybody else. And this is not discounted. The next largest is contracted services. Looks large, looks like we can cut it, but we ask for explanations on every single line item in this category. The result was all items are required for safety, reliability, regulatory, or contract requirements. So insurance is required on the property. Payments are made for workers' compensation and other liabilities. Software maintenance is required by both the contracts and to keep software in good condition. Given the cybersecurity issues over the past year or so in the US, we do consider this non-discretionary. So chemicals treat the water supply and wastewater treatment, assist in fuel generation at the plants, necessary to continue to provide safe electricity, safe water, safe wastewater treatment. Replacement parts keep the plants running, among other things. Tree trimming alleviates unintended power outages. This is an area that the commission can choose to cut. Be aware that it will increase power outages due to tree limbs. History has shown that costs in this category are soon followed by more outage times and occurrences. Bank fees are required for the contracts. Professional services, we treated that similar to contractual services and asked for an explanation on every single line item. The result was that all items are required for safety, reliability, regulatory, or contract requirements. Vehicles, this category keeps up the maintenance on the vehicles that are used to provide services, which is a safety issue. GRU has already significantly reduced the take-home vehicle usage, reducing the miles driven. So the indirect costs, these are required payments to general government for services such as payroll processing, risk management. Portions are applied to costs for the city auditor's office, the city attorney's office, the commission expenses, the clerk's office, the finance area, etc. Communication services are required per the contracts, and safety and reliability. Materials are used to maintain the infrastructure. Computer hardware and maintenance are required costs in order for the utility to provide services to customers. Uncollectible and bad debt expense is required. Sludge disposal is required. Repair of the HVAC in buildings is required for upkeep and for insurance purposes. Trunking radio maintenance is required. Essentially all the categories GRU considers on the slide required non-discretionary expenses. So that's the total of the 76 million. This slide has categories that the commission could choose to say they are not required and that they are discretionary. These are more of the soft costs: advertising, office supplies, gas rebates, community outreach, furniture, special events, lobbying. There are viewpoints on both sides on whether these are discretionary or non-discretionary. However, you should be aware that they include the following under the first line. That includes the cost of campaigns like the Influshables, Save Water, and COVID-19 response. Our customer survey from Qualtrics is also part of those costs. Monthly bill inserts educating customers on things like backflow preventers, irrigation schedules, rate changes, storm preparedness, water quality reports, project share, medically essential services, and 811. Under community relations, it includes the Brighter Tomorrow banquet, Engineer U, which is an educational outreach for elementary school students, GRU in the neighborhood, charitable campaign, volunteer network, and Williams Elementary, whose relationship has been ongoing for 25 years. So the utility has included a sum of $2 million in the options the commission requested for non-labor reductions, which are these costs. So utility expenses include debt service, which is a significant portion of costs. This slide reflects current debt service. These are principal and interest annual payouts due on the $1.6 billion of debt the utility has outstanding. Total, including interest, is $2.4 billion. You can see the jump up in 2025 described earlier. So this reflects the increases in the debt service, principal and interest payments due on the utilities debt over the next 9 years. Over the next 9 years, the utility will still need to fund the capital infrastructure program, the replacements and improvements every year. That is a need, not a want. It does not go away. As a result, the debt will continue to climb. The debt service will continue to climb. This slide does not include CIP needs beyond 2030, nor additional capital beyond the normal replacement of the infrastructure. This slide also does not include the debt service that would be required if the commission could obtain funding for renewable energy. This is for only normal infrastructure capital needs. This was provided to the commission in earlier one-on-ones earlier this year. And again, you can see that step up in 2025. So while this slide is up, as a reminder, GRU goes out to the market to obtain funding for capital infrastructure roughly every 2 years. So GRU asks investors, bondholders to loan the utility money in return for payments that provide a return of that investment plus interest. The last time GRU issued debt was in 2019. It's now 2 years later, and GRU needs to complete a bond issuance in the summer. So we will be coming back to the commission for approval to issue bonds debt in early June so that we can issue in July. So the money is required for capital needs. It will increase the debt, it will increase your leverage, and it will increase your debt service. The alternative is to not maintain the infrastructure, which is not something that we're recommending. We're also bringing back a plan for debt defeasance from the 2020 transaction savings. In the fall, we will be bringing back, if the commission would like us to, a longer-term plan for bringing the utilities debt burden down.
If you'd please pause for a question, Ms. Resnick. Commissioner Ariola.
Yeah, it's not so much a question as it is just sort of a breather in the presentation, because I think this is really the key, commissioners. I think we have to accept that the decision that we made to reduce the GFT was done so with the knowledge that the refinancing of the 2019 debt was in order to pay for the capital cost of things like AMI, CIS, and then the leftover was to be put into cash reserves to bolster those cash reserves being depleted. By reducing the GFT, we are acknowledging those uses, but what we're hearing from GRU, and I think the point that was raised earlier, is that extra funding isn't profit, it's not revenue, it's money that needs to be spent on other necessities like keeping up infrastructure, cash revenues, and the general fund transfer. So in one respect, I think that the long-term defeasance plan is going to be very important, but this budget and the next year's budget are going to be extremely important in determining the future, because that first graph showed that we've got a certain window where we've got to make these choices. So I would like us, we had a discussion at our last meeting talking about passing continuing resolutions that sort of express the will of how we'd like for certain levers to be approached every year, and that was in reference to the discussion about the fire assessment fee, correct? This would be more about our commitment to reducing the pressure on those funds from the refinancing, because we're going to run out of those if we keep spending at the rate that we are for the uses that they are. So that is of particular interest to me, Commissioners.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Asnick, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So unfortunately, along with the flat revenues and increases in expenses, high debt service, high leverage, high required general fund transfer, the utilities ratings have been downgraded 5 times in the last 10 years. The last downgrade was a 2-notch downgrade. The events that set this in motion began over a decade ago. This most recent downgrade, along with the previous series of downgrades, drive costs up. In an environment with flat revenues, increasing expenses, the downgrades do drive up costs. The cost of capital, which are the loans that investors provide to GRU to fund the capital infrastructure, have increased interest costs going forward. Variable rate debt interest costs go up immediately. Cost of liquidity support on the variable rate debt go up. So this recent downgrade set in motion activities that the Commission and utility now have to manage, along with the other complexities of your very, very large debt portfolio. So unfortunately, the series of downgrades puts even more pressure on your community that already have a very high low income percentage. So the previous downgrades are costing this community $27.6 million. So this slide is a visualization of those downgrades. And I apologize, I did miss this point when I was talking about GRU is needing to issue debt in July. So as part of that process, the 3 rating agencies will rate GRU at that time. S&P is obviously already acted. Fitch most likely will downgrade the utility. I'm a bit unsure about Moody's, but would not be surprised if they also downgraded the utility. So the current set of downgrades is unusual. Most utilities GRU size are AA rated. This is a clear message to the Commission from the rating agency S&P regarding high rates, high debt, high general fund transfer, and financial inflexibility generated from past decisions. A small reduction in the GFT without a plan for future years, along with an unfunded mandate of 100% renewable energy goals, exacerbated the issues. There is an immediate $1.2 million in unfunded budgetary expenses for 2021. Increased costs and fees above $1 million for the next 15 years, $32 million through 2051. Added to the $27.6 million, this community now has an additional $60 million flowing outside the city of Gainesville. These additional costs are just the tip So we have legal and other fees, potential collateral postings. We're monitoring that daily now. This also impacts refundings going forward. Typically, when we complete a refunding, the goal is obviously to pay less over time. So you're completing these refundings to reduce interest cost or maybe the outstanding time frame of the new bonds. The 2017 bonds are callable in 2027. A set of downgrades will cost the utility approximately $5 million in potential savings on a refunding of those bonds. And of course, there are other risks. Reputation, so the counterparty risk profile. Essentially, GRU is now more risky. Investor perspective and confidence in the commission to deliver, and by that, it's to increase rates when necessary. The rating agencies, S&P, Moody's, and Fitch, have been warning in their rating reports that the utility's financial strength was declining for several years. So investment in uncompetitive generation, specifically the biomass plant and the solar feed-in tariff, high leverage, high fixed costs, high general fund transfer, low median household income, 100% renewable goal is an unfunded mandate. So again, it's a direct financial impact of $60 million for the series of downgrades. I think I just covered that one. Okay. High rates and high debt levels in a community with one of the highest low income percentages place incredible pressure on the ability to not just fund the normal capital needs, but also the renewable energy plan. Broadband expansion, and I realize that that may be a general government goal at this point, but CIS and AMI are competing with normal capital needs. The general manager sent information to the commission already regarding the CIS and AMI projects and how those might be impacted by the commission's request to lay off or reduce employees. Okay.
Yes.
So the GFT should be reduced to a formula that protects the utility, should be calculated on GRU's earnings. The bond downgrade added $32 million in additional costs to the utility. Essentially, that wiped out about a quarter of last year's refinancing savings. Revenues are flat to falling due to conservation and low population growth. Fixed expenses such as outside debt service and the general fund transfer put significant financial pressure on the utility. Expenses are expected to grow at or above inflation due to the age of assets. Austerity within the utility is reflected by 0.5% expense growth the last 2 years, is not sustainable and makes further expense reductions impractical. Future debt needs just to maintain the infrastructure will increase the utility's debt service from $2.4 billion to $3.1 billion by 2030. Financial leverage will continue to increase, exacerbating the potential for future debt downgrades. Further significant reductions in the general fund transfer and rate increases are required to maintain a sustainable utility. The financial impacts of potential acceptance of the UAB energy policy recommendations are not part of GRU's expense projections. So GRU's position, GRU does not support O&M expense reductions requested by the commission and provided on the next slide, as the utility is past the point of being able to safely trim expenses to mitigate the financial pressures. GRU does not support moving forward with AMI and CIS while simultaneously reducing labor. The two projects cannot be implemented without adequate labor support across the utility. GRU reluctantly supports rate increases to fund the utility's infrastructure, fully realizing the pressures this places on portions of the Gainesville community. GRU supports further significant and sustained reductions in the general fund transfer. GRU supports and will bring back to the commission the following for consideration: rate ordinance for multiple year rate increases. Future commissions can vote to rescind the ordinance so as not to bind future commissions. Ordinance to reduce the utility's leverage so as to reduce financial pressures on current and future ratepayers. ordinance for the general fund transfer formula for future years, and a ratings policy to solidify the commission's direction on credit metrics to be maintained. So I would like to say that there is a path back to improved credit metrics. However, it requires the full support of the commission. The path back takes the utility to a place where the increased costs to the community are smaller. Will not be easy. The question is, do you want to? And so those are the things that we'll bring back into the fall to really to get some further direction on that. And so these are the options.
Ms. Rasnick, if you pause there, Commissioner Ariola.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to jump in right here and say that I want to see GRU bring back those recommendations. I'd like to put that into a motion because I don't support layoffs. I don't support, we've done freezes in the past and that was difficult as it was. But I'm not going to support laying people off for something that the city commission can honestly figure out with our officers. We can figure out how to make this balanced budget. We've made difficult decisions before when it comes to revenues for GRU, but we've come this far. We need to see these projects through. AMI, CIS, people who are working at the utility need to know that their jobs are secure. And you know, with words like layoff flying around, it's never inspires confidence. And I want to inspire confidence to people at GRU that their jobs are secure. And I want to make sure that we have plans going forward to deal with the credit issues, which we've always known. You know, we've made every decision knowing that because of the initial debt service of the NACE facility, you know, we've always had to deal with this. And so I think plotting the path forward is the most responsible thing to do. So I do want to see that. And I don't think it should be on the backs of layoffs and things of that nature. And I do hate to have to ask, though, that you all continue to look where discretionary spending can be cut. I saw a lot of those accounts. I don't pretend to supervise those accounts for the different expenditures that were listed. But I saw a few there that, you know, I think if we were to ask for some cutbacks, I think they could muster that. Obviously not talking about safety and reliability, that's different. But I'd like to go ahead and move that we ask GRU to bring back the options that they listed.
Commissioner, can you just hold off, because we're going to get another motion for the options, and we can include that with it instead of having multiple motions on the floor.
If that motion includes layoffs, I won't support that. So
But
that
yeah,
seems to be where we're at.
let's just see. Let's get to the end of the presentation before we start.
Can I be recognized for a motion at that time then?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Ward.
Mr. Mayor, so yeah, I want to be exceptionally clear to all GRU workers. I'm not interested in layoffs, not interested in reducing the number of people working. I do want to make sure that all the FTEs we're talking about are actually filled positions. If we're talking about some positions that are not filled and haven't been filled if they're recently unfilled, that's one thing. But if we've got a position that FTE that's been sitting around for any period of time, then that is different than a layoff. So I don't want anybody to think that their job is in jeopardy. That's not the point at all. I'll be very clear about that. But if we have FTEs that are unfilled positions, then I do want to hear about that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So Ms. Rasnick, if you want to go back to the different options that you prepared.
I believe they're on the screen.
Yep.
Can you see them? Okay. So there are 5 options. Option 1, to Commissioner Ward's point, it's layoffs and deleting FTEs of 109 to 122 employees, 13% of available workforce, non-labor expense reductions, rate increase in the electric system of 0%. As we discussed previously, it's difficult to complete 2 major projects, the billing system and AMI, without adequate labor support at the utility. Option 2, layoffs and deleting FTEs of 112 to 129 employees, 14% of the available workforce. No non-labor, rate increase in electric of 0%. So option 3, layoffs and deleting FTEs of 44 to 57 employees, 6% of available workforce. Non-labor expense reductions, rate increase in electric of 4%. Option 4, layoffs and deleting FTEs of 60 to 75 employees, 8% of available workforce, and the rate increase in electric of 3%. So option 5 is GRU's recommended option, layoffs and deleting FTEs of 0 employees, non-labor expense reductions, rate increase in electric of 7%. So please note that option 5 at the 7% allows for more normalized rate increases in the electric system going forward, essentially CPI adjustments. So the 7% is a large percentage. However, the commission directed 0% last year due to the pandemic. This is essentially CPI for 2 years. So this shows the customer bill impacts for each one of the options that have an electric rate increase. The wastewater system has a 5% increase for the foreseeable future due to infrastructure needs a couple of years out, and the gas system has 3%. To put that in perspective for those two systems, like the 3% in gas is 300,000. So it's relatively a small system and a small rate increase. So for option 5, which is GRU's recommended option, it creates an additional $7.21 for the average consumption for a customer with all 4 services. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. This presentation is complete.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Rasnick, and everybody that worked with you to pull all this information together. It does go appreciated. Seeing no lights, I'll go ahead and share some of my thoughts. Certainly the major pressure here has been provided by our debt leverage and the recent downgrade from S&P. And so, Ms. Rasnick went through the metrics that they considered and looking at those things. And, I'm sure there were others as well, but there were some sort of biggest drivers of, what they saw as the cause of that downgrade. So the biggest one is, and I think Commissioner Ariola alluded to this, is our commitment to renewable energy right now. What we have already done as a city over the last, really 15 years, that's baked into the budget. That those costs are with us and cannot be ameliorated. And in fact, in many circumstances, on many days, the Renewable Energy Center is our lowest cost, on a per megawatt basis for any given day. And so we would not, when you're talking about economic dispatch, we wouldn't shut that down anyway. Our second driver, according to the rating agencies, is our renewable energy goal. The goal looking forward, committing to 100% renewable by 2045. We could remove that goal. We could, as a commission, say we no longer have a commitment to that, and it would make zero impact on our budget. And that's why it really vexes me that is something being presented by the rating agencies as a factor that they use to make their determination. In fact, the next attempt we are making to expand our suite of renewable energy resources is rate neutral. And so that 50 kilowatt commitment, I'm sorry, megawatt, that'd be a bad deal. That 50 megawatt commitment has no bearing on our current situation as far as upward rate pressure or, our other metrics. They cite the GFT. Again, it is very difficult for me to reconcile that a reduction in 2 million versus 12 million for 1 year, because again, the rating agencies know that any commission can change that in future years, would significantly change the metrics by which they would rate us. The commission showed a commitment to reduce the GFT, but in a $415 million budget, the difference between 2 million and 12 million is not going to be the difference that I think anybody would expect to see, and whether the utility is healthy or not. And then they cite the low median income of Gainesville residents. That is not something that we have any control over through this budget process. It is something we're aware of. It is something that we absolutely are focused on with our other efforts concerning equity and addressing inequities in our community. But it's not anything that this commission has control over in an annual budget. We can't suddenly increase median income. So the question then becomes for me, how do we move forward in a fiscally responsible way that achieves our community goals? And so we could reduce the GFT by 12 million, have 0% rate increases this year, and then what about next year? Those upward rate pressures will still be there. This is not a panacea. This is a 1-year adjustment that allows the commission to avoid making any rate increases again. And then we're in the same position next year. It came up at the last meeting, and I very much concur, and actually have been pretty consistent in this over the years, that our concern is for our lowest income residents who live in an aged and deteriorating housing stock that is creating a situation where a very large amount of their disposable income is going to their utility bill. That's a problem that we can and should, and I believe can address this year. There's 2 ways that can happen. One's an action we've already taken, which is the renters' rights ordinance that will bring all of these non-multifamily, the quads and under, up to a minimum standard. The second, and I believe we'll be hearing more about this next week, is money from the American Rescue Plan. And I assume that all of you have had a chance to look at the city manager's first pass at a sort of funding distribution of the funds that we're going to get. A little over 6 million of that is being suggested to the commission go towards home upgrades for our low-income neighbors. And that's something that we can do right now. It's not difficult to find the folks who are in the most need. We can look at census tracts and identify our lowest median income neighborhoods. We can then go look at the highest usage for the homes in those neighborhoods, reach out directly to them, and come up with a plan to address their built environment needs, their home needs. We can employ local labor to do it. We can scale it very quickly, and we can make sure that not just for this budget, but for all years going forward, any increase will have a much reduced impact on our lowest income neighbors. That is the most responsible way I see as moving forward. If we avoid, and I'm going to ask Mr. Pilarski, you have your hand up. When you get recognized after the commission has some deliberation here, I'd like for you to review for the public's benefit once again, because I noticed you didn't put it in this presentation, what has been the trend for rates over the last 5 years. Because we have been very careful to not raise rates or raise rates as minimally as possible over time, and that too is not a sustainable model. The cost of running the utility will continue to go up in the future. That's not going to change, and it's important to keep pace with that. If that does not end up being the will of the commission, we're gonna have a very difficult conversation about where we get that $10 million from. And we can do that. We can raise the millage, whatever it is, 1.7 or 2 mils. We can cut $10 million worth of services. But the direction of this commission, and I'll exclude you, Commissioner Duncan Walker, because this is your second meeting, but we have been putting a lot of pressure and emphasis on a lot of general government services and programs because our neighbors need it, because that is what the community has told us is important to them. And I don't want to reverse course on that. I continue to believe all of those things are important and vital to a healthy community. So this is a difficult decision. It is an incredibly difficult decision. And I don't think there's any decision that we make that's going to magically change our risk profile, as the rating agencies have said already, or a rated agency has said. So that brings us back to how do we make a decision that's in the best interest of our neighbors, not just for this coming year, but in the long term. And how do we continue to achieve the many competing goals that we have between renewable energy, a financially sound utility, a set of services for our neighbors that is delivered by general government that helps us achieve our ultimate goals centered in equity and realized through our strategic plan. And because we have chosen to do all that, we have made the decision difficult, and I'm fine with that. I'm quite all right with that. So with that, I'll go over to Commissioner Santos.
Thank you, Mayor. I think one of the things I think would be good in a future slide, I think I've seen it before, is where the amount of consumption per household and how much that has gone down over the past 10, 15 years, both electricity, water, and all of that. And that it's like direct pressure on the utility of expenses are increasing, but revenues decrease and stay the same. And I think that's where we struggle with the most is we're not finding the revenue. I don't see us getting 10,000 people moving here every year, which would solve revenue issues pretty quickly, but you'd have all the other issues that come with that as well. I think one of the things we have to relook and see where can we find revenue? Where are there opportunities for revenue? And I do think one of those is looking at municipal broadband. Other cities have done that and created revenue and been able to reduce the pressure on GFT. We have to be looking at how we have to find revenue. I do think one of the things we should look at as well is looking at transferring GroupCom to general government. GroupCom is a loss center at the utility. It hasn't really changed. It's just kind of stayed the same. I think it's one of the reasons why it hasn't changed into the world we are of where kind of municipal broadband has gone. I think being in general government, it would feel easier to look at debt there, and also would allow us to be able to have more different rates for different individuals when it came to income, so we could be able to help our low income individuals, but also bring in revenue from individuals who can pay. I think we have to be looking differently at our steps. Getting into the deeper portions of the budget, I think we should keep moving forward with the CIS and AMI. There are definitely costs to that, but I do think there are significant midterm cost savings, and that's also, we have to look at where can we save costs. And that will be reductions in labor. We won't need as many people when AMI and CIS are up, and that's probably in the 3 to 5 year range we would see that. And I don't think we should give up on that because I think it'll just hurt us down the line. I think we should have some rate increases. I do believe that we should look at reducing some FTEs, both looking at ones that, to Commissioner Ward's point earlier, there are FTEs that are just continually kind of open, and those are the ones I think we should look at as well, but maybe looking at broader than that. I do want to say that our rates are lower than Duke, and when you look at the bills, like our rates are higher, but when you look at bills, because of what we've done to reduce consumption, our bills are more comparable. To Commissioner Ariola's point, I do think that we should, resolution or whatever it may be, but like set that the next FY23, FY24, FY25, that we would lower $2 million in the GFT every year there. Commissioner Ward brought this up before, looking at duplicate, I think it was last meeting, duplicate offices or duplicate things that are being done both in general government and GRU, and looking at where can we find cost savings. Tree trimming is one example of that, where we do it on both sides, and there may be savings there as well. I do also think that we should give the mayor ability, and this is talking to former mayors, has happened in the past, but when we do go out for a bond issuance, is having the mayor be a part of those discussions and being there. I do think that is kind of an important aspect.
Please maintain order, please.
I do think that is an important aspect to both have staff there, but also having the mayor there as well to be able to kind of speak. I think that's where talking about the renewable energy, that goal, and kind of what does that mean, and what is the commission's kind of direction in that is, we haven't been saying we're just going to go all out and change it overnight. So that's something too that I think we should allow. I don't know if no enforcement do it, but I think it's something that we should consider. Thank you, Mayor.
Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, Commissioner Ariel, I totally agree that we should consider some sort of resolution, understanding that it's not binding, but because we can't bind future commissions, giving a sense of what we're trying to accomplish, and I would like us to commit as well as possible that we're interested in lowering the GFT $2 million a year for the next 6 years, which would take it to historically low levels. Certainly, when you roll in inflation, that would be very historic levels. I want to point out, follow up on what the mayor said. One of the things that the rating agency pointed out they were concerned about was our commitment to renewable energy. Our community wants renewable energy because prior commissions committed to renewable energy, and with that debt, we now produce between 30 and 40% of the power that we produce in any given quarter is renewable. That's not very well known in our community. Whenever I tell somebody that, they're a little surprised. The state average is 3%. 3% for municipal utilities around the state, renewable energy production. Q2 of fiscal year 21, our renewable energy production was 38% of the total. When I share that with people in our community, overwhelmingly they are pleased to know that. That comes at a cost. That came at a cost. It's not an option for us now. We're not choosing to have renewable energy. That was chosen, but there is benefit to that. And that's part of our debt issue. That's part of our debt cost. We really ought to tell that story more often. People should not be surprised when I tell them on the street in conversation, because it helps tell the story of why we have high prices, why we have high rates.
If we could just maintain order, you'll have your chance during public comment.
I would like, we should also recall that the option that we chose biomass over many years ago was a coal plant. I think we chose well. Previous commission chose well. I would like, Mr. Bilarski, if you could give us a slide, obviously not tonight, of the rates over a 10-year period. We've done that in the past. That is helpful to me to see the progression. I think it's helpful to other folks too. It's a reminder that it hasn't been that long ago that we cut rates 10%. That's conveniently forgotten. I need to know how many unfilled positions we're talking about with FTEs. I guess those are deletions is the terminology we're using. I will reiterate that I won't vote to lay anyone off. But if we have unfilled positions, I want to know how many and how long before we vote. I absolutely, let me say again, I'll reiterate, I absolutely support a resolution that indicates that we want to reduce the GFT on a consistent year basis, with the understanding that we can't hold future commissions to that, but hopefully that's something useful for staff to take to the rating agencies. There are a few other things I could bring up, but that belabors the point for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Ariola.
Thank you. Good discussion. So let me lead off by starting where we left off. I would be open to hiring freezes for unfilled FTEs, but where I stop on that is we would have to examine the same practice, I think, for the general government as well, which, as the mayor mentioned, many of the pressure points is this commission wanting to build up capacity to be able to accomplish some of those policy goals, and will actually require those positions to be filled. So we'd really be hampering our own objectives if we were to do that for the general government. And so where I fall on that is I don't just want to ask GRU to blanket freeze because we're not going to ask the same thing of the general government, and I just don't think that would be very fair. I would be interested, however, in seeing from both sides of the ledger ways that we could do that, but obviously not making that decision today. Next, regarding the rescue plan funding, very briefly, it's good that the guidance came out. What I got from that is it's very broad, and there are very few exceptions as to what that funding cannot be spent for. So that's a discussion we are going to have later, so I just want this thought to percolate in everybody's head. We're getting 32, county's getting 52. if you were to ask City of Gainesville commissioners and Alachua County commissioners what they would do with $82 million, we can come up with a lot of answers. And to quote former Commissioner Todd Chase, it's a game of hungry, hungry hippos. And what I really, really, really want, everyone knows how that game goes, right? As you're a kid, you're just smashing the button, you're trying to get as many little hippo treats, I guess that's what they are. I don't know what hippopotamus eat. But anyway, the point is, GRU needs to be a part of that conversation. From what I've heard, the idea is that we're going to first approach cost recovery, things that additional costs and lost revenues. I'd like that to be considered for both general government and GRU. And then we can talk about projects like broadband, because you know, we have a lot of priorities, and I want to make sure everyone's objectives and the ones that we've agreed upon for many years throughout all of our different meetings, that we get those addressed. I think there's a real opportunity for generational development in East Gainesville in the coming years, and I think that those funds should be very, very closely paid attention to those, particularly in capital outlays over the next several months. I'm okay with the budget solutions that GRU has presented us, because the way that I see it, these were known factors when we made the budget decision last year. None of us were comfortable with any kind of increase to costs to our residents, whether it was taxes or utility rates or what have you, because at this point last year, there was a lot of uncertainty as to the state of the world. I think it's fair to say at this point last year we had no idea where we were headed. Certainly didn't realize we were headed to insurrection in January. But I think it's appropriate for us to make these decisions now. I don't feel the need to go out and defend renewable energy, because at this point it's almost, you know, if someone is going to try and convince me that we should continue to judge our decisions today based on metrics created in the 20th century, I really can't help but smile at that, because this is just a completely different century that we're going into. There's absolutely nothing that is going to remain the same, and energy output is very much in the same vein of that. So, you know, the credit agencies are behind the times on that, and maybe they need to work on some of their literacy when it comes to climate change. So what I would like to do to put this into a motion, Mr. Mayor.
I'll still recognize you. We've got a couple commissioners who haven't had a chance to speak yet. Do you mind reserving until
Sure.
you get their
I'm
input?
gonna airmail it then, and then I'll put it in after. So I want the option to come back with no layoffs. I want both GRU and general government to bring back options for FTE freezes for this year, for unfilled positions, that is, not ones where you're currently interviewing. Second, for GRU and general government to collaborate with American Rescue Plan funding allocations. My impression is that is not the case right now. That is the impression that I have. To me, that is non-negotiable. We're one organization. They ought to be working together. The continuing resolution signifying this commission's intent to signal to future commissions that they ought to reduce the general fund transfer by $2 million a year to get us to that equitable delta. And then lastly, I do have to ask for GRU to bring back potential cuts for non-discretionary and discretionary funding. In the past, I have put a hard number on that of 1.5 million. I will refrain from that only because we are in the middle of May. But I'd like you all to know that if I don't, I really want to see those options, because we may have to take some of that in the end. That's it. So
Okay. Thank you. And before I go to Commissioner Johnson, we will, I found out, be ready to talk about the ARP tomorrow at General Policy. So we can, I think, get more specific with direction to staff then if we're ready. Commissioner Johnson?
Thanks, Mayor. A couple of thoughts is, one, it seems that we have a one city approach, just talking about, some of what David said, there's this one city approach and it feels convenient. When we're talking about some things, but not convenient when we're talking about the budget. And for that reason is why I support especially the part of Commissioner Ariola's motion where we would ask for not only a reduction or at least the options for FTE freezes on the GRU side, but also the general government side. And in addition, what I would like, for you to consider, Commissioner Ariola, adding to that is, I think the fourth or fifth part of your motion was about the non-discretionary and discretionary funding for GRU. I would also like to see that for the general government side. I think there's always an opportunity to continue to reduce the GFT even more. And I'm not in the rating agency's heads. And I do like the gesture where we say that we are going to signal to the future commissions that there should be a $2 million decrease, but it still stands that they are looking at what this commission does and essentially why we're doing it. I think there's always an opportunity for us to at least consider what reductions would look like on the general government side, and we have done that. We have done that with the $2 million, but I think there's more opportunity for that, and that's what I've asked for in the past, and that's what I'm hoping Commissioner Ariola will consider in the future. The conversation I'm most interested in is what it's going to take for us to get back to a AA rating. So once we have that information, I'd like to know so that we know what options we have out there and how we should proceed moving forward. I am not in favor necessarily of layoffs. I am very interested in understanding the FTEs that we have that are unfilled, that are vacant on both general government and GRU side. And I'm very much looking forward to the conversation tomorrow about ARP. We have a lot of funding that's coming into the community. I have some ideas about that I'll share with you tomorrow. The city manager has put forth his. I'm looking forward to hearing what you all have to say about that. And I think that it could alleviate some of the pressures that we're seeing with the GFT. Not just the GFT, but the rate pressure, especially in low-income communities. I have some specific ideas around that. At some point, I'm sure you're going to repeat the motion because I don't think I got all of it.
It's not on the floor yet, so you're good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Ward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm generally in agreement with what everybody's saying. I'm going to put out something again that I put out several times a year that I know everybody up here hears and many people in the community hear, but I'm not sure that our charters always hear. And that is that this is the city of Gainesville. It is not the city and GRU. It is not. It is the city of Gainesville. The city of Gainesville, the people of Gainesville own a municipal utility, a set of municipal utilities operating essentially as a DBA that we call GRU, that we call Gainesville Regional Utilities. It may be that I'm alone in this, and that's okay. I don't think I am, though. It irks me when we have officers at high levels talk about this as if they were separate organizations. They are not. It is one city, whether anybody likes it or not. That's what the charter says. We need to act as if that were the case. When there is a pain point on one side of the budget, it is a pain point for the entire city. It is not something we can push off and feel better because one side of the ledger has some relief and the other side doesn't. It's not scoring points. We need to act as if this were one organization, because it is one organization. Whether anybody thinks that's a good idea or not, that's what we have. And I would really like to see communications from charter officers that respect that. Thank you.
Commissioner Sacco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm in agreement with Commissioner Ariola's ideas. As for looking at discretionary spending in general government, I think it's more than a matter of discretionary spending. I think it's a matter of commission requests. As I previously said, we will have to scrap some of those and pull back. So if we are going to look at how to reduce general government spending, I think we need to start with the commission's request first. General government is operating the bulk of our core services, and there might be some fluff. There might be some things that we can reduce back, but I think the bulk of the increases have come from this dais. And they're all good projects. I voted for many of them, but we need to assess if, the ship is sinking. Do you plug up the holes or do you throw out water? We have to figure out which one to get to. And I think that's, if we do address general government, we look at our own projects as well. Otherwise, I completely agree with the rest of it. I do not want to lay off a single person. But I do want to look at redundancies in general government and GRU, as Commissioner Ward said, to assess what positions are just being repeated and could be done by one person, either in general government or GRU. I think that could also scale back both GRU and general government. I do think at some point we will have a rate increase, or we'll need it. Maybe not to the tune of 7%, but the cost of materials go up, the cost of salaries go up, and they should. Salaries should increase year by year because the cost of everything else is increasing. But I think we need to recognize that costs do have to go up by some percent. I like Commissioner Ward's idea of seeing a 10-year period so that we can visualize, along with the rest of the community, the trend and how we've been. There's no way for any utility to say we're going to freeze our rates at a certain amount for the rest of forever. That's just not viable. But I do hesitate at the first year jump to 7%. I recognize that that's to get us at a more stable position, and then in years prior, only increase it minimal percentage. Years after, increase it by a minimal percentage. But I would like us to see where we can cut down before we accept a 7% increase. And that would be my ask, to see where we can reduce positions that are redundant and discretionary spending that comes from the dais. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for the commission's edification, the discussion of commission projects and increments will be on tomorrow's agenda as well. So I think it'll be good that we can discuss both those things in that context. Back to Commissioner Ariola.
Thank you. I appreciate all the comments. I'll just, before I make the motion, I'll just respond to a couple thoughts. Yes, I have asked that in the past. I've asked for commissioners to be willing to trim their increment requests, so that's entirely appropriate to ask. Secondly, because I've heard a couple of commissioners mention the idea of redundant operations. We've been having that conversation for a few years now. It depends on who you ask, because some people will say they're not redundant operations, and some will say they are. And that is a challenge of having two such large charter offices, absent of clear and direct majority commission direction. That's not going to change. So if you all, I don't know how you all feel about that. So just saying, I don't know that'll happen in this budget. But if someone wants to lead that charge, I'll be there to have that discussion, and decide. So in any case, I'd like to move that we ask, GRU staff to, come back with an option, that includes, no, I believe it was option 5, was it? Yeah, that was the list, okay. Yeah, so bring back that option, to bring back, for both GRU and general government, non-discretionary and discretionary, cuts, including, city commission increment requests. But we're gonna have the discussion tomorrow, so that's kind of like moot to make that point in the motion. And then lastly, I'd like, to ask that, city staff bring back, a draft, continuing resolution, regarding, reductions in the GFT.
And you also mentioned before, no layoffs, but a potential FTE freeze.
Oh, right. The potential FTE freeze, examined on both, general government and the GRU ledger.
Okay, is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Okay, we'll call it Sacco. Commissioner Ariel made the motion. Commissioner Sacco seconded the motion. Back to the commission. Commissioner Johnson.
Mayor, I know Commissioner Arioli said that you did not want to add a dollar amount to this discretionary and non-discretionary funding. Where does that?
Can I tell you why?
Yeah.
I'm not putting that? Because we're talking about one side of the ledger. The other side of the ledger is what is this going to take for property tax increases to get us to where we are, fire assessment, the final rate on that. And so until I have both of those ledgers with this direction plus the direction we're going to give general government tomorrow, until we have both those ledgers more fleshed out in front of us, it's difficult for me to come up with I just don't want to pull one out of the sky. And so when in that last time, that 1.5 figure that I mentioned over that budget vote a couple of years ago, which you all might remember well, it was not from the sky. It came from figures that were put in front of us, and so that's where I fall on that. You know, I can't.
I mean, I would love to ask our charter officers, but if I got that direction, I wouldn't even know where to begin. Like, do I do 200,000? Do I do 2 million? Do I do 5 million?
So what I can tell you, Commissioner, in the past, what charters have done is come back with a series of cuts with associated cost of those cuts and allowed the commission to decide which ones they want to give direction to move forward with or not.
So all of them, like all of them, the
Yeah.
universe of.
Or, yeah, up to a point. I mean, up to where we're endangering life, or where their conscience cannot allow them to put. It's going to be a while. So if you want to take a seat, we have a few commission lights here and a couple of charter officer lights. Right, the voters elected us here. that's the job. That's the job that we're put here to do. That's the job that we're put here to do, Mr. Scott. You're welcome to run. We'll have an election in a year and a half. So if that's the direction, if we want to see discretionary, non-discretionary cuts from general government and GRU, then I mean I think it'd be easier to put a cap, like up to $10 million or something like that.
I like the cap idea.
A cap.
And then it's our decision. It's not theirs. Like we can decide where.
So a maximum amount that they need to come back to us with, and then we may not cut that total amount.
I like that idea about a cap.
Yeah, and and thank you for explaining it that way, Mr. Mayor, because obviously they our people go through so much work to set these budgets in front of us right now, even to the point they're at, and I realize we're asking a lot out of them. So I'd be comfortable with a cap of $3 million for each.
Okay. Can we do a cap? Okay.
Do you want to go higher? We can go higher. I'm not beholden to the cap.
I had asked before in a prior meeting, 5 million, so that's what I'd like to see on both ends.
For the sake of seeing it, I'll add that to the motion. We'll add for the, and can we, time out. If we're gonna have a high cap like that, can we also have the frozen FTEs included in that cap? Because if we can get a 5, is that just confusing?
You're the maker of the motion.
Yeah.
They can include, all those things are costs.
Yeah, okay.
Right. Seconder agreed to the change of $5 million, up to $5 million in cuts from both general government and GRU.
So I agree with a cap. I just wonder, like, for example, the auditor's office and the attorney's office they'd have to lay off their whole department to reach 5. So I guess it's a cap as opposed to like a mandate, so it's fine. I agree with it. I just worry.
Again, those would be things that we could decide if we want to not cut anything in the auditors, we could, it's more looking at what would it take.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, so $5 million of cuts. I'm gonna say the obvious. We're talking about a magnitude of difference between the two organizations, but I'd like to see what the cuts involve as well. And I think it's good for the public to see what $5 million in cuts would look like. Okay, Commissioner Sacco?
Yep. Hi again. So if we could add Commissioner Ward's idea of getting the rates compiled for the last 10 years, just to have a visual of where they've been, I think that would help with the discussion.
Yeah, if we can just send it out to the commission. Do you have it ready, Ms. Resnick? Oh, you do? You are good.
Yeah, they have that information. We've seen
Yeah, it's not unusual. So go ahead, if you can share your screen and put that up. Okay.
Okay. Could that be emailed out?
Yeah, of course.
Please?
Yeah, we'll get that out in a memo to the commission. And just for the public, if you can't see that, so starting a decade ago, 2012, these are just electric rates, right, Ms. Resnick? Yeah. So 2012, 1.7% increase, 2013, 0% increase, 2014, reduction of 5.6%, 2015, reduction of 8.5%, 2016, 0%, 2017, 0%, 2018, 2%, 2019, 2%, 2020, 6.4%, this year, 0%. So you can see the trend has either been kind of zero or reductions.
In 17, we reduced rates 10%. I'm sorry, that was mid-18.
But that was fuel. That was fuel cost adjustment.
Yeah.
That wasn't the base rate.
After we,
Oh yeah. It was
Yeah,
mid. It was a
after
midterm.
we-
It was mid in February. Yeah, that's correct.
Mr. Blarski, want to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, this is where I don't like doing this from the lectern or the dais or from the other end of the Zoom. I'd rather see the chart. That totally misleads the reduction as a result of the buyout of the biomass plant. It's not included in there because of the, yeah.
Okay, well, just get it to us. Thank you, Ms. Resnick, for doing it on the fly. It's a good glimpse. We'll look for the final decade's worth of the rate trends. And if you'll include it the next time we have a budget meeting, a budget discussion.
But Commissioner, I mean, Mayor, geez, I keep calling you Commissioner. I apologize. The fact is, what you were getting at before when you were asking the question is our rates are lower than they were a decade ago, as you know, in terms of the base rate and the fuel adjustment. So when we're talking about an increase, we're still at a rate that was lower than it was a decade ago.
Yeah.
I think that was your point.
Well, and yeah, thanks. Not so much a point, but just, we look at these things through a one-year lens. I think it is important to look at over time, and that there are always things that got us to where we are now, and that's one part of it. Commissioner, yeah, I'm sorry to put in.
Thank you, Commissioner. If it might help, thank you, Ms. Rathnick. I would not have been able to multitask like that. If it is possible, and I think it might give a clearer image, would it be possible to state what the cost of the standard kilowatt per hour, kilowatt was? And I think show the percent increase, but also show the value of that kilowatt and every kilogallon of water. And I think that shows us, I guess, a better, an easier to follow guide of how prices have increased or come down. Is that possible?
Yeah, good, Mr. Blasky or Ms. Resnick, I don't know. If you can answer that now, I mean, all of that's possible. It's just, if we just clearly communicate to Ms. Resnick what information we want, she can get it back to us. And that's, she is not her head, yes. So you want what it's
I want
been
the
per
value,
kcal,
yeah.
per kilowatt,
And
over the
the
last
rate
10 years?
increase, as it happened that year, or decrease as it happened that year. I think having both numbers paints a clearer picture.
Sure,
Thank you.
we'll get that back. Okay, Commissioner Santos?
Thank you, Mayor. One more request in that same vein. I do think, while looking at rates and things like that important, I think actually looking at the bill, what are our residents actually paying? And also, I think that may show the decrease in usage as well. So I think what have the bills been over that period of time, which I think will be a better reflection of what happened. I have concerns about FTE freezes and using the term freeze. Labor is a multi-year thing, and if we should get rid of it for the future years too, because that's how we have to budget for future years and those. So I would rather it not be a 1-year freeze of that FTE, but more of actually removing that FTE. I also, one reason I'm not going to support the motion is because I don't think that we're going to cut $5 million in either budget, and it's a lot of work to get to that point, and I don't want to have our staff working all that, and I don't believe that. Well, I'm not going to support that much, so I won't support the motion for that reason. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bolarski first, and then Ms. Rasnick, or we can go in opposite order. I don't really care.
Yeah, I've been waiting a while to try to address some of the concerns that the commission has, and if I don't speak now, we're going to take a break for bio break. Let me just start by one of the questions that was asked by almost each one of the commissioners was the vacancies that we now have, and I think it's really interesting to know that we have 84 vacancies at GRU right now. None of them are considered long-term vacancy. In fact, some of them are there for the work to be done on CIS and AMI. So we did a good job of culling out that over the past couple of years and even before. So, that's part of, the vacancy rate that we budget. And, actually the vacancies went up a little higher due to COVID, but they rotate, so a vacancy could be there for, a line person at the end of 1 month, and then it would be the customer service director the other month. So, that's the tyranny of freezes. You get people into those freezes that because of the timing, you can't hire a really fairly important component of your team. So I can assure the commission that there's none that are there for any long term. They are rotational at the present time and have been over the last couple of years. The second thing I want to do is apparently the use of profit, I apologize. Everyone should know that I spent 30 years in private industry. So when I look at revenue and I subtract expense, that's a profit. And I apologize if it caused consternation. I wasn't trying to go against, the standard. So I'm sorry. We will get the rates. The mayor talked about the trend over the next 5 years. The other thing that's really, really important to understand here is that this GFT reduction, and the mayor mentioned it, and I think another commissioner, he talked about doing it for 1 year, and then, what are you going to do the next year? And quite frankly, that's the point. We are in a structural financial deficiency right now that requires a formula that matches our ability to pay. So the GFT is not a one-time issue. We need it to be formulaic, and the trend, quite frankly, is not our friend. There's been a fundamental shift in the utility. So we are looking at, the change in what we provide to the city. And, when you start talking about providing to the city, which we are absolutely a part of, I agree with Commissioner Ward, where you get wrapped around the axle with being one city is that we're separately managed. So everyone, in fact, I have to say, the charter does not say we are one city. It says that we are, I have responsibilities. In fact, I'm responsible in accordance with the charter for the efficient administration of the utility system. I'm fully responsible for that, as well as the city manager being responsible for those general government responsibilities. And that's not to say that we don't work very closely and we try to coordinate and collaborate, but you can kind of get wrapped around the axle thinking about it as one city when you people that have specific responsibilities and prepare their own budgets. We don't commingle our budgets, and we have different types of operation. I also wanted to talk about the idea of the rating agencies and what they're looking at. And I will tell you that they look at what happens here in Little Old Gainesville. And one of the things in regard to the renewable goal has been the pressure being applied by the Utility Advisory Board. They are not talking about, and I understand I don't report to a Utility Advisory Board, but they are your advisors. And they have had 5 meetings in which they are talking about the next integrated resource plan, and they are looking to change things now. And rating agencies see that. So they said it specifically. They're afraid of pressure that would create an unfunded mandate at the utility. So, their words, not mine. So I also agree that we're not going to magically change our profile. I think they were the words that the mayor used. But what we need to do over time is cautiously and prudently change our profile so we can better serve the interests of the city and the community. And in that regard, I wanted to address the entree into broadband. The commissioner is absolutely right. We are doing things in a certain way, the old-fashioned way, and we're trying to mitigate risk to the utility. We could get additional revenue, which would incur additional risk. There's a risk-reward formula here. And of all my years working in private industry, I understood that very well. I understand as the general manager of the utility, I have to make the risk-reward equation. And getting into broadband from GRU's perspective right now is very, very risky from the utility's perspective, particularly given its debt profile. So I probably missed a couple of things that were mentioned here. The one thing was that I think it was said that the community wants renewable energy. They also want a viable utility. So there's all of what we're talking about. And then the mayor talked about competing interests. He's exactly right. How do we balance the competing interests? We already are at some days, 40% renewable, and the rest, as Commissioner Ward said, that we're down to 3 or 4% across the state. So we ought to be proud and we ought to be loud about that. We publish those reports, on a quarterly basis. But I will tell you that when Qualtrics does their surveys, that the large part of people that are responding are saying, I can't use the language here, but lower your rates. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rasnick.
So Ed mentioned the point regarding the unfunded mandate for renewable energy. I just wanted to say that the rating agencies are not against renewable energy. As a matter of fact, they are for renewable energy because that's what investors want. The issue that they had was with all of the other financial pressures, there's no financial plan right now to fund it. So I just wanted to make sure that that piece was clear. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion on the floor. I'm going to try to go down it really quickly. It will include general government and GRU coming back with up to $5 million in cuts. That can include freezes, no layoffs is in there, so that's going to be quite a challenge for both of them. A resolution for a reduction of the general fund transfer by 2% I'm sorry, by $2 million a year. And then some other supporting information as far as the historical trend in rates, the future trend, and the bills, the bill comparison, not just rate comparison.
And,
Get it all?
We're starting at option 5.
Yeah,
what
and
we're-
baseline option 5. Okay, so with that, we'll turn it to members of the public. We'll start with a member in the chamber. And then who do we have with Adam tonight? Adam, I'll do what I've been doing the past couple meetings and alternate, so we can take time to clean the dais. Anybody in the chamber wish to make any comments to the motion?
Yes, may I have the overhead, please, beforehand, and we get that situated so I don't waste my time before I start?
Do we have the doc cam tonight? There we go.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Poe, Commissioners, Nathan Scott. Mayor Poe, your false narrative is that the City Commission will be forced to raise GRU rates as a result of the debt downgrade. The truth of the matter, however, is that Commissioner Harvey Ward, Mayor Lauren Poe, and the rest of the Gainesville City Commission could have avoided the debt downgrade by cutting the GFT when you had numerous opportunities to do so over the past month, but you chose not to do so. The reality is that the mayor of the Gainesville City Commission didn't learn anything from the two-notch GRU debt downgrade by S&P, which served as an indictment of their ongoing financial mismanagement of GRU and your failed policies. As evidenced by the 30-minute city budget discussion yesterday, Monday, with no substantive discussion of any budget line items, you don't want to talk about the debt downgrade. You don't want to talk about cutting the GFT. You don't want to talk about reducing spending. It's business as usual for the City Commission. Despite Fitch and Moody's downgrades hanging in the balance, there's no fiscal restraint and no adults in the room willing to address the root cause of the problem. Commissioner Ward, you are directly responsible for the current debt downgrade that cost GRU customers $32 million of the pain that you're now complaining about. Stop whining and making excuses, commissioners. The root cause of the current two-notch debt downgrade is the ongoing financial mismanagement of GRU at the hands of the mayor and the Gainesville City Commission, the unnecessary expansion of city government, and the ongoing spending addition of the mayor and the Gainesville City Commission, who continue spending more and more money that they don't have at every single meeting. Mayor Poe, you stated that we disagreed on the budgets over the past decade. You are correct. Clearly, your approach is not working, as evidenced by the 5 GRU debt downgrades that have occurred under your failed leadership. I'm not sure why you feigned disappointment on TV about the most recent debt downgrade, but your track record is disappointing in itself. In sharp contrast, history has proven that my statements are correct on GRU downgrades. The most recent GRU debt downgrade was avoidable. I believe that the new approach is required, which requires a common sense solution. Lower the GFT as shown on this slide. Take a $12 million reduction of the GFT, you got a $12 million revenue gap on the city government budget. You fill it with the $1 mil property tax increase. I'm not in favor of property tax increases, but it's a problem you created, and it's a lesser of the two evils compared to a regressive utility tax increase that disproportionately affects low-income families and businesses. You've got a budget cut that you need to make on the city of $4 million. You can offset by other revenue. You're going to get the incremental property tax assessments coming out. So this debt downgrade was avoidable, and the city must control spending. On the GRU side, $12 million reduction of the GFT, immediately apply that money to offset some of the debt, defer AMI for 1 or 2 years to avoid another debt issuance. What do you think is going to happen when you go to market for debt? Downgrade, duh. Budget reductions, marketing, et cetera, unfilled vacancies. You got 2 of them in GRU administration. I don't know what they're for. They don't tell us, and I don't know what the amounts are. Need to avoid a rate increase in FY22. People can't afford it, and I'm not saying it's forever, but the GRU debt projection is unsustainable. $3.1 billion.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Appreciate
Come
your
on,
comments.
just listen to reason, commissioners.
Very good.
Please,
Thanks
thank
for
you.
being here. Adam, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. People are lining up out here. First in the queue is Paul Clayton. Mr. Clayton, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Paul Clayton. First of all, I want to say that I looked at all of this presentation graphs that the GRU put out. I looked at them today, and I want to commend GRU for such a good presentation. I was absolutely appalled. I had no idea that things were as bad as they are. My actual first job 60 years ago was with the Gainesville City Utilities when John Kelly and Bob Roundtree were there, and I have a lot of respect for the employees and feel like I kind of have a bond with them. I worked on line crews. There were 3 of them at that time. I'm sure it's much bigger now. And I was privileged to see some of them professionally later in life. So I am certainly against any kind of layoffs. You know, the downgrade, you know, Mr. Scott mentioned that a lot better than I can. I feel like a lot of this problem is on me because I wasn't down there yelling at you guys when some of this stuff was going on. But anyway, I feel like, you know, you are so agenda oriented that you fail to see the unintended consequences of your action, and that's what's gotten into this fiscal irresponsibility place right now. Mayor Poe, with due respect, you know, I don't think helping people decrease their utility bills is going to help this, but I really agree that you need to do something to decrease the transfer. Although, as Mr. Scott said, you'll probably have to raise the millage rate. But I feel like, you know, what you do penalizes the people that you say you're going to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clayton. Mr. Mayor, over to you.
Okay, next speaker in the chamber, please. Welcome.
Can I have the overhead, please? Thank you. Okay, so it was a week late. Took the Gainesville-Sun a week to come around and print something about this. I am happy that they printed above the fold. Electric rates are expected to increase. The 2-notch downgrade in the first of its kind is not the first of its kind. And it is the 5th bond downgrade since 2010. Mayor Poe, I believe that you've been a city commissioner in some capacity with a couple of breaks since, what was it, 2008? Something like that. We've had 5 downgrades. You've been in position of leadership. That is just a horrible track record. You know, Mr. Ward, Commissioner Ward talked about this being one. There is no separation between GRU and the city commission, that we're all one. That's crazy, because that guy, Mr. Bolarski, knows what he's doing. He's managed utilities. You're an economics or a history professor. Your track record is terrible. Listen to him. Listen to the markets. Mr. Areola said the bond agencies are behind the times. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. You just encapsulated what is wrong with this commission. You live in La La Land. Mayor Poe being present at future bond negotiations, that's going to send the right signal? I don't think so. I think they're going to look at his track record and the downgrades, and I think they're going to laugh and they're going to deep six us. What was it, 2-3 years ago, we did variable, we refinanced the debt and made it variable. Well, that's coming back to bite us. Another bad, horrible decision. You won't cut the GFT. Well, the market's doing it for you. Now, I have a suggestion. I'm not all gloom and doom. Okay, the equity, person of equity and inclusion, whatever that office is, that person has said they're going to leave. Well, that's what, $167,000? Well, hey, that takes a big chunk out of $1 million of additional debt increase. Let's not fill that FTE. How about that? You're going to raise rates. We know that. But poor people can't afford it, and you going in and picking out some people to help because it looks good is not going to help Gainesville. It is not going to help overall. It's just, I'm just shocked absolutely shocked at what I saw today. That was the best presentation that I've seen about the situation of the city, and you guys are just nibbling around the edges. You got to cut the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. And just, so we're clear, the Director of Equity and Inclusion is a charter officer. We have an obligation to fill that position per our city charter. Adam, back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Next up, Brian O'Brien. Mr. O'Brien, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Well, commissioners, it's a sad day today when residents of the city of Gainesville are finally given the truth. I would like to commend Claudia Rasnick on her report presentation. I think that should be the required reading for every citizen who has all the evidence in their mailbox. Just look at your GRU bill. The City Commission has dictated to GRU how they should run the utility. The cows come home. I mean, when you buy a tree burner that's not cost effective, you're being penalized, and now you have $3 billion worth of debt that you're not going to be able to get out of. It's a very, very sad situation. The fact that the rating agencies say that in their report is helpful to shed light. The City Commission, especially the leader of the group, has a bad habit of redefining things, and they don't want to talk about profits. They don't want to talk about the losses. They don't want to talk about the debt. They're leading the whole city down a terrible, terrible path. And person sitting in the center of that dais tonight signed a contract to purchase biomass tree burner. I myself am a pro renewable energy person, and everybody can see that the market's going that way. The problem is that the forced biomass to power generation is not a true renewable energy source. It was an option years ago. It's been decided that it does not work. It's not cost effective, and it's not renewable. The trees don't regrow at the same rate that Mayor Poe's burning them left and right, cutting down the forest around Gainesville, creating more pollution and toxic fumes than anybody in the Southeast. And then he goes around and brags about how much renewable energy he has. I have no doubt that the tree burner will be shut down within a matter of a few years. And at that point,
Sure, Brian.
according to the accounting,
I think that's
the
it, Mr.
city's
O'Brien.
supposed to pay it all. Okay,
Mr.
thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor, back to you.
We have nobody else in chambers, Adam, so it's.
Uh-oh. We have a few more people here. Next up is Ms. Debbie Martinez. Ms. Martinez, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Debbie Martinez. I appreciate you taking my call. Highly intelligent and well-informed citizens have been warning this commission and previous commission for years about the monstrous, grossly overpriced biomass tree burner plant was not financially sustainable, but you dissed them with character assassination instead of embracing their thoughtful participation. Mr. Poe, because of your role in the 2009 grossly overpriced multi-billion-dollar biomass tree burning debacle, GRU bills have skyrocketed, leaving lower-income people to live in mold-infested homes because now they can no longer afford to turn on their air conditioners. Instead of cutting your bloated budget so you could lower GRU bills to help working families and the poor, you and many members on this commission kept spending, spending, and spending, knowing lower income people will suffer the most. Mr. Poe, in the 10 years you have been on the commission, you and other members keep raising GRU bills, property tax bills, fire assessment fees, and anything else you can put your hands on. There is nothing, absolutely nothing progressive about sky-high utility bills. You are creating more and more poverty. Poverty is not a family value. You are driving GRU into the ground with your overspending and gross mismanagement of our utility. Mr. Poe, this is a financial disaster of your own making, along with others on this commission who refuse to make the necessary budget cuts to protect lower income people and salvage our utility. Do your job, cut your bloated budget, and cut GRU bills. This is how real progressives govern. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. Next up is Nancy Darren. Ms. Darren, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, Nancy Darren. I really appreciate this conversation and the deliberations of the commission. I appreciate Claudia and Mr. Bolarski's efforts and presentation. And we've certainly hit the point, as I've mentioned, of this transition time. It's just very challenging, but I'm so encouraged by today. I really encourage commission members, at least a couple of you, to attend the APPA meetings that are coming up in June and July. They will be discussing how do we figure out these very difficult issues of antiquated regulatory and revenue models as we move into a very different future. I noted that S&P, I was kind of that they gave us a stable outlook, and they just went and slashed the credit ratings of the top U.S. oil producers, Exxon, Chevron, and Conoco, and really blasted them with an unstable, downgraded outlook for the future because of climate change. And I know Moody's is already beginning to incorporate these sorts of things. So some of these ratings may change before too long. Looking for other sources of revenues, the broadband, how do we continue to have the control? As S&P said, we have virtually all our energy needs are met through locally owned generation. With the Texas debacle as one example, I heard in the UAB the other night that, of course, most of Florida is about 87, 90% natural gas, which, yes, it's cheaper right now. But when your supply is cut off, we just cranked up our little pile of coal and we cranked up the biomass plant and we were fine. We had to buy on spot for a couple of days and spent, I think, and this is not accurate memory, maybe $100 million. But then we were able to turn around and sell 900 million. We made a whole bunch of money because we had power to sell and everybody else was cut off. So we need to be having discussions. I really appreciate how this has gone and the efforts of the commission, the diversity and all that. And we use about 750 to 850 kilowatt hours a month, where the average Floridian is way over 1,000, I think 1,400. So we're doing things right.
Ms. Darren, thank you. I'm afraid your time has expired.
Thank you, Ms. Darren. Next up, Armando Gomez. Mr. Gomez, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Adam. So first of all, I want to just tell Claudia and Ed Bolarski what a phenomenal presentation. Claudia, you should present boldly. We should not be scared to speak truth to power. Be bold, be matter of fact, because it just clearly seems that there's somebody up here on the dais is just taking a play out of the previous president's playbook. We have a QAnon re-envisionist history that we want to make up alternative facts here. And I think it's really interesting that we all of a sudden, when it's politically expedient, we want to talk about one general government, one city. December 7th, 2017, we talked about one city when we were going to fire Ed Belarski. We talked about one city when one of the commissioners wanted to go to the Charter Review Commission and bring up one city. And magically, it seems to be the same person or the same innuendo. When we have trouble, we want to talk about one city. And then last week, one of the commissioners wanted to play the alternative tax game again. We need to hire a management consultant. No, you all need to hire a consultant for you all. You don't seem to understand what structural budget is, and Mayor Poe probably does because he taught economics. So the thing here is, commissioners, is this is not something you didn't know. One of you proposed cutting $12 million, but then all of a sudden, I don't know, you get timid and scared and, well, I don't know how it would look to my friends, so I can't make a motion to cut $12 million. When you're being told that this is a problem, but you all want to have the Trumpian playbook, good job, because you all are progressive QAnons. Good job. Real good. And then you want to try to convince us last week that black people who subsidize these renewable energy programs, you're okay with the colored people paying more because it's okay. And then all of a sudden you make a mistake. The mistake you're making is you all just don't care. As long as it's somebody paying more, you don't care because you don't care as long as it's people that you identify and look like, but you want us to pay more. And that is not okay. And so for anybody who wants to sit up here and talk about the biomass plant, whether it be one of the people that just talked about it or one of the people that wants to cheerlead you and talk about everything is great, it's not great. It's a bunch of nonsense. And lastly, if we're being objective here about cutting, how is it that you're going to ask GRU to cut any more financial constraints when general government is not making one iota? Not one of you should have any increments here. Not one of you should have any increments. And further, if we also want to talk on the GRU side where we can cut the house, Mr. Belarski should sell the GRU building for $6 million because he's presented it publicly. And you know what? Then instruct your city manager, who some of you like to go out drinking with, to make cuts too. How about that? Goodbye.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. We do have a couple of additional callers. I do not know their names, so will the caller with the last four digits being 7850? Would you kindly introduce yourself? And you have 3 minutes.
Yes, I'm Juanita Miles Hamilton, and it was quite rewarding to be able to hear some honest discussion regarding GRU, and I'd like to thank Claudia and Mr. Belarski for solutions for years of slot machine guidance and policies by our own city commission. Mr. Scott and others have been speaking and predicting that this day was coming. And I want to thank them for warning us. Life is not avoiding the pain of tightening our budget. It's living through it and plowing through it and making good decisions for all the residents of the city. It's not about party, it's about solutions to maintain a healthy and financially viable city. And right now, we need to tighten our belts. We have to tighten our belts. We have to make reductions. And many solutions have been presented by speakers as well as management. And we have to listen. We have to listen and we have to move forward. We have to bite this bullet and move forward. Thank you, commissioners, and the city of Gainesville.
Thank you, Ms. Juanita. We have another caller on the line, Mary Lou Hildreth. Ms. Hildreth, you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
We sure can.
Mayor and commissioners, thanks. I signed in late and didn't hear it all. But I am just so depressed at the divisiveness that the callers have, and I know what hard jobs you guys have, and I know this isn't a place where anybody is happy to be in, but I'm a person that, wants to, work together to fix these types of things, whether or not it's Commissioner Sacco, let's cut some of our budget. I understand that. I do the whole budget for my whole city, although it's a small city, but, I want to remind Mr. Scott that he was one of the people that voted for the biomass plant. So there's some hypocrisy going on there. And, I appreciate Armando, but he can too be a little bit too, can we all just try to figure this out together and not keep pointing the fingers and the blames and the excuses? And yeah, that's all I got, guys. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Ms. Hildreth. Mr. May, that was our last caller. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you for everybody that contributed. We appreciate that. Back to the commission. We do have a motion on the floor. Commissioner Santos.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. It's just a clarification on the motion. And is it 5 million in budget cuts that are one year, or is that reoccurring budget cuts? Thank you, Mayor.
It was not made specific. Do y'all want to make it specific, or just leave it up to staff? Okay. Okay, and we'll go to a vote in 2 seconds here. One of the great deceptions that's been perpetrated over the years is that somehow cutting government services will benefit people in poverty. I know that our neighbors are smarter than that, and if government services get cut, the people that will be most significantly impacted are people that already don't have much money to go around. And I wanted to correct the record on that. So with that, we'll move to a vote. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
That motion passes 6-1 with Hayes Santos in dissent. Mr. Bolarski, old hand, new hand?
That's a new hand because I wanted to jump in here. I had sent some information out to you today. We really need guidance in regard to the AMI project. I think I said to everyone that Lisa Bennett from our city attorney's office is getting close to that final contract to sign. But if you remember, the funding for that project, was removed. And I need guidance on what to do because she has said to me, as well as Claudia, that it'd be imprudent for me to sign a contract for which there wouldn't be funding, and I tend to agree. So I need to know what to do with that. Can you explain any more, Claudia?
No, we don't. She doesn't need to explain anymore. We understand your ask, and we're not prepared to make that decision tonight. We need you all to come back with the request by the commission. We'll make a decision about how we want to move forward, and that will either include funding for AMI or it will not. What is the time frame that Ms. Bennett's working within?
I think she's ready to...
We're meeting tomorrow for the final.
Well, okay, then you need to ask for an extension. There's just no... We're dealing with a big budget decision here, and it's not appropriate for the commission to make a decision tonight based on all of these variables that we're considering at this point. So I would ask for an extension, and I would get another meeting on the schedule as soon as possible once both staffs are ready with these decrements, and the commission then hopefully can give direction on how we move forward with both expenses and revenues. I wish we had a better answer for you, but that's just where we are. Commissioner Ariola?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I saw that message, Ed, and I've been very clear with my support for the AMI project. I don't want to see funding taken away for that project. My motion today is to try and get the commission to a place where we can decide on the GRU budget before Last Chance Saloon in September, so that we can have that funding secured for AMI, because that is my intention. My intention is not to put that up for the block. I'll be very disappointed in the commission if we decide to not fund AMI, because I believe that's the kind of project that is going to begin to turn the tide for how people view their energy usage and how people view themselves as GRU customers. I think that's the linchpin that turns the tide. And so for us to get there, we need that project. So I don't want to see that funding removed. I understand we're up against some sort of timeline, it sounds like, so just ask for extensions and until we get that settled, because that is not something, the commission has not given majority direction to remove that funding. So do not do that, please.
And I just, we understand the urgency. So as soon as staff can get this back to us and on an agenda, we'll be able to give direction. We'll anticipate that sooner than later. Any member comment? Real quick, the agenda for tomorrow has been adjusted. As I said, those two items got added, the commission increment and the ARP discussion. It's still on there, but I asked for the charter officer complaint discussion to be removed because two of our charter officers are not going to be there. And I think it's important that we have all 6 charters participating in that discussion when we discuss how they're going to be evaluated and what their process is. So we'll just look for that when we adopt the agenda. Thank you all for the discussion. Thank you, GRU staff, for all the work that you put into this. We'll try to get to some final direction here soon. With that, we are adjourned.